Well, time now for our Monday conversation with three colleagues from the Parliamentary Press Gallery. Susan Delacourt, columnist for the Toronto Star; Joël-Denis Bellavance, the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for Presse; and John Ivison, columnist for the National Post and Parliamentary Bureau Chief for Post Media. Good to see you all again. Susan, let me ask you here. We have the Green leader today calling for a national task force on COVID-19 as the numbers soar. Confusion over the rules in various parts of the country. And again, we're hearing calls for the federal government to use its emergency powers to set minimum standards across the country. What strikes you about how this response is now being handled?
Well, I think what we're seeing is that this is a response to people's confusion. This thing is getting bigger than anybody thought it was going to get at this time of year. It's getting scary. It's as promised. And I think everybody's looking for one place to blame, but I think it's going to be, I'm not convinced. First of all, I've never been convinced that a strategy or a policy changes anything. And I do think we are seeing this in pockets. We are sitting here in Ottawa right now, which was a hot zone and now is not so hot. And I think the way this is going is an incredibly local one, but I think this reaching out for an answer or a policy or a strategy is a statement of a larger frustration out there that people just don't know what to make of this second wave. And it's huge, and it's surprising us, and it's cropping up in everywhere, but not everywhere.
All right. Joël-Denis, how much confidence should Canadians have in how the second wave is being handled by their political and their health leaders?
Well, you see that there is some reactions pretty strong in every province about how this has been managed by the provinces. And within each province, there are some confusing messages being sent to parents about how their kids should behave in school, whether they're going full time or one day out of two. So I can understand the confusion that people perceive nationally when there is confusion provincially, even with the message that is being sent by some premiers. So I guess there's some frustration because it's been a long pandemic so far, about 9 months. And we see that the second wave is harder than the first wave. So I guess people's frustration are rising to the top. And there's more pressure on the federal government to impose a national strategy over this. But I'm not sure this would be the right solution because one region of the country varies to the next, and so you cannot apply one size fits all for all the country.
But John, the suggestion is does it make sense? So some minimum standards. Like here's what we expect for all Canadians when it comes to masking. Here are the conditions under which you begin to close down restaurants, and if it's a certain case level or an infection rate level within the community. I mean, I think people felt pretty good about the first wave of the pandemic. How badly is that confidence, do you think, being shaken now, and what should the federal government do about it?
Well, clearly these numbers are rising, potentially to the level of out of control. I mean, if it gets to 10,000 a day, which is what was projected on Friday, if we don't get a grip of it, more than double the current numbers on a daily basis, then we are in trouble. But I don't know what national standards, in inverted commas, would do. I mean, we have a public health agency, and that is what the Public Health Agency is charged to do. It talks to its counterparts provincially. And I do think that, conditions vary across this huge country, and a one-size-fits-all strategy is not likely to be successful. I do think while we've got pressures from health professionals and others saying we've got to close down more things, at the same time there are pressures from business groups and small businesses and restaurants saying, look, we're dying out here. Literally, our businesses are dying, and you need to get some kind of balance. So who would be a provincial politician trying to juggle those competing interests? And I just don't see that the federal government wading into an area of clear provincial jurisdiction would help make things better.
And yet what we have, Susan, is we heard Patty Hajdu say today, the health minister, essentially that look, it's, we have an overarching a message from the federal government, but then it's up to local and regional health authorities who are on the ground, who have a much better idea about how the pandemic's playing out. And yet, is that what we're left with? The Prime Minister on the sidelines imploring premiers and health officials in the provinces to do more, but not taking any action beyond that?
I like this description. It came from Andre Picard at the Globe and Mail. He said we're into the chapter in COVID called Surge and Urge, and that it is surging. And basically the power is that the only power that the Prime Minister or any political leaders have, as John was saying, is to urge. I think the real question is, if we had those standards, if we had, let's lay down the law, who's laying it down? Who are people listening to? They've shown a real frustration or a real, especially now, there's a bit of backlash to the rules. So I think when you're hearing people say we need a national strategy or we need a national approach or we need the Prime Minister to say something, the presumption is the public is going to listen. And I don't think we live in those times anymore where the Prime Minister says something and everybody just does it.
Okay, I want to let's change subjects here. John, I want to jump to you, and I want to talk about Canada's relationship with China. And the Prime Minister still hasn't made a call on whether to ban Huawei. The House is likely to debate a motion from the Conservatives tomorrow calling for a Huawei decision within 30 days. Prime Minister is mostly careful in what he says about China these days, given the ongoing detention of the two Michaels. We have a parliamentary committee accusing China of a genocide for its treatment of the Muslim Uyghur minority. Bob Rae, Canada's UN ambassador, says there's evidence of a genocide by China. The Chinese foreign minister today called that assertion ridiculous. Is it just me, or for the most part are parliamentarians and ambassadors being harder on China than the Prime Minister and his ministers?
Yeah, well, I think the Liberal line has toughened up. Partly in response to the tougher line coming from Erin O'Toole. When he won the leadership, a large part of his foreign policy message was all about China and decoupling from China and looking for other partners in Asia. I think that the Liberals have had to respond to that. They do have a policy review in train. When Francois-Philippe Champagne became Foreign Minister, he said we're going to review this, and a year later we still have seen no evidence of that. And from what I hear inside the department, the old China hands are quite happy just to keep things ticking over. They don't want to take too much of a tougher line. It's more like, well, let's wait and see. Things will change. There's pressure domestically on Xi Jinping to back down in certain areas. No evidence of that. So I don't think that's a great hope to rest on.
Yeah, and Joël-Denis, how does the what appears to be clearly the election of Joe Biden in the United States. He's promised a tougher line on China. How does that influence how the Canadian government may need to respond? Does that help Canada?
I think it does. And I think Mr. Trudeau must be secretly praying that Mr. Biden does take a tough line. And maybe that would take away the flag that Canada would take if it was alone in attacking China. But clearly, you coming back to Huawei, I mean, the government has been dragging its feet on this file for the last 2 years. So at one point, some of the allies of Canada, like the United States, Australia, Great Britain, will lose patience with Canada because Canada is basically the only one remaining within the Five Eyes alliance that has not made a decision on Huawei. So I think it's time to take a decision, and the Conservative Party is trying to force the government to make a decision on this file before the end of this year. So it may lead to more reaction from China, but it's the opposition now leading the charge mostly, and the proxies of the Prime Minister, as you mentioned, and Mr. Bob Rae and parliamentary committees.
I should point out, though, that there is, to my understanding, no international convention on feet dragging. There's no time limit on that. It can go on.
Just on the Huawei thing, there is a de facto ban on Huawei in Canada already because none of the big telcos are going to partner with Huawei. So, the Prime Minister might look at that and go, well, we essentially are not going to have Huawei in Canada, so why do I need to inflame the Chinese by making that official?
Yeah, interesting. Susan, what are your thoughts on this to conclude here about where I mean, is the relation, are we sensing a clear pivot in where the Canadian government's going to be heading on China, do you think?
Bob Rae gave an interesting interview over the weekend, which the Chinese government has been picking up and attacking him for. And he was asked, what was the reaction in China? And he said, I'm not worried about the reaction in China. That was not directed at China. It was directed at the rest of the world. Canada has been relying on, as it has with the United States, encircling them, in getting a larger bunch of people, and definitely wants the United States in that effort as well. Canada knows that by itself, can't do much against China. So it's toughening up, but that's a sign that it is asking the world to get tough with it, if that makes any sense.
It does. All right. Thank you all for your time tonight. Take care, and we'll be in touch again soon.
Thank you, Peter.
Peter.